Good morning.
Today is the 23rd of March 2010, and my name is Larry Harris. I'm a docent, a volunteer here at the Palm Springs Air Museum in California. And part of our mission is to record and preserve the history of our military conflicts, especially World War II. As part of the Veterans History Project of the Library of Commerce in Chicago, in Washington, D.C., we conduct interviews of veterans and civilians who participated in this conflict. And today I'm proud to introduce to you Jack McKELVIE, we'll get that right, who was a flying officer in the Canadian Air Force. So we're going to talk to him about his history, his childhood, what made him what he was, and how that affected his entering the service, and when and where and how. So it's nice to have you here, Mr. McKELVIE.
Thank you.
Now, please state and spell your full name and tell us when and where you were born for our record's sake.
My name is Jack McKELVIE. I was born at Courtenay, Vancouver Island, 1924.
Very good. As we mentioned, we were going to start out with your childhood, which everything does start from. And tell us where you were born, what the effects were of your location on your life and this type of thing, which would be, I'm sure, interesting to people.
Well, I was born in Courtenay, Vancouver Island, as I said. At a young age, my parents moved to Vancouver, where I spent my rest of my life up until my adult life. And went to high school, grammar school, high school, played in all the sports, ice hockey, basketball, football.
You're tall enough to be a basketball player.
Yes. Yeah,
and in those days you were very tall.
Yes. Yeah.
6'1" was a big center in those days.
And after I finished high school, the war was on, of course, and when you got 18, you got your draft call.
And yes.
So at 17 and a half, I ran down to the RCAF recruiting station and joined the RCAF.
That was an early start.
Yes. Yeah.
Before that, in growing up, what do you remember of your childhood and your mom and your dad, your family?
Well, not much, just a normal childhood, you know. My dad was on the Vancouver Fire Department, so, you know, my mother and dad raised 3 children, an older sister, myself, and another younger brother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were a child of poverty, in a sense, as the age of that at that time. The Depression was on. Did that affect you at all in your family life?
No. I never felt any effects of that at all. My parents were able to raise their 3 children with any problems that I can remember, or at least they didn't tell me they were having any problems. So, you know, and
they weren't the
as I say, my dad was on the fire department. He was an officer, so he had a fairly substantial salary. So we were fine.
Yeah. What do you remember of your neighborhood and kids you played with and so forth? Did that affect your later life at all, as far as?
No, because all the children I played with are all interested in sports. You know, we played hockey, but we'd play street hockey. You know, and then we played football, and all the sports that were available. Tennis. We were close to tennis courts, so you know.
Did you work during your time in high school when you were growing up?
I did work. I worked for. I used to work Saturdays for a Shell gas station, who was a friend of my dad's. So he let me work Saturdays to earn a little pocket money.
No.
Yeah.
Did you, by chance, have a car when you were in high school?
No.
Not many of us did.
No.
And what about girlfriends?
No, not as you. No,
Yeah.
I was. Not that I wasn't interested in girls, mind you, but you can't afford them neither. You know?
So you did date in high school? And,
oh yes, yeah. You know, school prom, and school dances, that type of thing, you know. Yeah.
Now, how soon after school, after high school, I assume, did you enlist, or what was the reason for what you chose at that time?
Well, as I say, that everybody was getting drafted, Now, if you went on to university, you probably had an exemption, but I didn't want. I didn't want to go in the Army, so I joined the Air Force.
Oh.
Yeah.
So at that time you had no desire to go on to college
No,
at
no,
that point?
no.
So what year was it that you joined the Air Force?
1942.
42?
Yeah.
And did you go immediately in the training, or did they hold you off for a while?
No, well, you go what you call manning depot, where you get all your medicals, all your shots, and your health is good. Then you go before an aircrew selection board.
Mm-hmm.
And in that interview, they ask you a lot of questions about your, what you know and what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, what do you want to be? I said, well, naturally, I want to be a pilot.
Mm.
He said, well, yes, you would qualify as a pilot, but he said, not for a long time.
Mm.
He said, all my courses are filled, but we do have openings in the radio gunnery school. If you want to go air crew right now, I said, I'll take it.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to the air crew gunnery school and wireless school, radio school.
Yeah.
I was there for 6 months, and I graduated from there, and I got my commission. So I was posted to an operational training unit, which was on the east coast of Canada. Now, before I went there, my first posting was to Bermuda to check out on cancel PV-1s.
Mm-hmm.
I was home on a week's leave, but I got a cable saying your posting has to be transferred. You are now going to go to the operation training unit in Penfield, New Brunswick. So I arrived down there. Now at that school, you are crewed up. There's pilot, navigators, radio gunner, everything's there. So they make up a crew. I was put in this crew, and we did 3 months training, extensive training on convoy duty and submarine duty.
Now, at this time, were you actually training to be a pilot, or?
No, I was radio gunner. Yeah,
still radio
that's
gunner.
the school I went to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That was a 6 months course, and where you got your flying training and radio training in the air, gunnery training in the air, and that's about it.
Hmm. So you fulfilled your obligations as far as being a pilot then during that
Yes,
period?
yeah. So I knew I was not going to be a pilot.
Yeah.
No.
And your rank then was?
I got to be a pilot officer when I graduated.
A pilot officer.
Yes, yeah. And I was, when I discharged, I was a flying officer, which is another step up.
Mm-hmm. And then you advanced to a
Operational training unit.
Mm-hmm. And your rank then was?
It was still pilot officer then.
Still pilot officer.
Yeah.
When did you become a flying officer?
Oh, about a year later.
So
Yeah.
then you were the actual pilot of your plane then?
No, I was a
No?
radio gunner.
Oh,
Radio gunner.
okay,
I was
flying
never a
officer.
pilot. Never trained to be a pilot.
Okay.
No.
Good. But a flying officer designates what
Yeah,
category?
that's what a lieutenant's position in the United States Army, you know. Yeah, but they call him flying officer.
Now, after all this, the training and so forth that you did to qualify you for that, then what were your assignments then? Where did they send you, and what?
Well, after we crewed up and we completed our training, we were sent back out the West Coast, and we joined 8 BR Squadron,
Mhm.
which flew the Pacific, from Alaska down to Washington and way out to sea. We covered all that area.
Mm.
Now the squadron, there was 25 planes in 25 crews in the squadron, so we had a lot of planes, 25 planes.
What type of planes were you on?
Yeah,
Did you
PV-1,
operate?
Vega Venturas. Vega Ventura,
Vega Ventura.
PV-1, which we have one on the tarmac here right now.
Yes.
And I was happy to see
They
that.
flew that in the other day.
Yeah.
And you, sir, you were on the
We-
PV-2s.
Yeah, that's all my career was served on that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, what was your first duty and obligation as in your operations?
Most of my duties were radio operating, challenging it, ground crews, challenging other aircraft, that type of thing, getting the reply, radioing it to the pilot. Now our crew covered a pilot, a navigator, and 2 radio operators and a gunner. Yeah.
And what type of gunnery on the plane did you
We
have?
we had 50 caliber. We had a rotating turret on the top of the
Oh.
aircraft. But the radio room was right next to it, so if necessary, you could jump up into the turret if you had to. You know.
So you doubled as a
Yeah,
gunnery
yeah,
officer
yeah,
too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Now, where were you stationed then, and where did you fly out of?
I flew out of Pat Bay, P-A-T, Pat Bay,
Mm-hmm.
Vancouver Island, British Columbia.
Hmm.
And that was a large Army Air Force base.
You know, and basically, then, what were your responsibilities in what you were doing? Was it anti-sub patrol, reconnaissance, what?
Yes, anti-submarine patrol, some convoy duty, and that's whatever other assignment they could give you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe escorting ships in. I remember at one time we were out flying way out. We were 500 miles out from base. We spotted an aircraft carrier being towed by a Navy tug, and it was a U.S. aircraft carrier that had been bombed, and they were towing it in. So we covered that for a while, but they were towing it into Bremerton, Washington, to be repaired. That type of thing we did. Yeah.
How close did you stick to the Canadian limits? Was that necessary? Could you go into the United States coastal waters, or?
No, we never went into the United
No.
States, but we could if we were asked to. You know, if we got a call from the U.S. Navy or somebody,
Mm-hmm.
we need some more coverage, but that happened very, very rarely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So your operating area generally was Canadian
Yes,
waters?
yes, yeah, yeah.
Most times.
Yeah.
Did,
We could go 500 miles out to sea and back.
mm-hmm.
And we could cover 1,400 nautical miles.
How much contact did you make during the time that you were serving in anti-sub and so forth? Did you make with the enemy?
Not
subs?
many.
Mm.
No. We did have a few contacts. By the time we got there, the sub had made its dive and was heading way out to sea.
Mm.
So we would try to chase it, but you know, we never caught it. No.
So what was your main method of spotting? And from what I understand, you said basically your duties were anti-sub
Yeah,
patrol. What methods did you use to spot?
we had radar.
Radar.
Yeah.
So they had the surface, no sonar connected there.
That's right. Yeah.
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 And you say your contacts were limited?
Limited. Yeah. Limited.
Uh,
It was more protection for Canada.
mm-hmm.
The Japs knew that we were out there, so don't come close. You know.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
And there wasn't.
Now, all the Japs did at times fire what they call these fire balloons.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's a lot of force in Washington, the United States. In Canada, a lot of forestry industries. So they would try to float these bombs over into the forest to set the forest on fire.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever come across any subs that were doing this type of operation?
We did. We shot down two of those fire balloons in my career. Yeah. Yeah.
Just cruised up and.
Yeah. And put a machine gun blast at them, and down they went.
Yeah. How
Into
large
the
were
ocean.
those?
They were, I guess they were 3-4 feet. And, you know, they were fairly big.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And do you have any idea how much, tonnage as far as the ammunition, the
No.
explosives were?
No.
They were just set, basically to start fires?
Start forest fires, yeah. When they crash landed, they would start a fire.
Mm. So, that's interesting. I didn't realize that was how many times would you say that you actually confronted
I only
them?
seen them about 3 times.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Now, there's other crews, you know, they encountered them too. You know.
So there was quite an extensive barrage coming in.
Yes, yeah.
With
yeah,
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some days were worse than others. Some days you go for weeks, nothing, you know.
Did you ever have an occasion where a subsurfaced and fired at you?
No,
No.
no, no,
I didn't know how that would have worked.
no, no.
Were you equipped to handle that?
Oh, yes, yeah, we carry depth charges,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And did you have to use or
Never
did
had
you?
to use a depth charge,
Didn't?
no.
No. Oh, that's good. Now, how long were you in that category of sub-patrol by and large?
3 years, approximately
Three
3
years.
years,
In flying out pretty much of the same ports?
Same, yes, yeah.
Airfields.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And when was the end of your service? At the end of the war, or was it preceding that?
No, the end of the war.
At the end of the war.
The war was over, yeah.
And
So we took our squadron and flew all our planes back onto the prairies, landed in the prairies. They picked us up in another transport plane, took us back to base, and then we were discharged.
doing all that flying and all that reconnaissance, there must have been stories that you have about things that happened or occurred, or
No.
bad, good, or indifferent.
Not really. I do have one story, and I don't know if you want to.
That's
People
what we're
will say
here for.
this a lot of baloney, but I come in from patrol one day, and the CO, when we went to the radio room making our report, somebody comes, McKELVIE, the CO wants to see you. I said, oh, what does he want? Don't ask me, just go and see him. So I into his office, saluted smartly. You call me, sir? Yes, I did. He said, you're going on temporary assignment. Oh, what's that all about? He said, just go back and pack all your flying gear, pack changes of clothes, uniforms, come back here, my plane will take you over to Western Air Command in Vancouver. You report there.
Mm-hmm.
Over I go. Went into Western Air Command, reported. They said, I said, what's this all about? He said, well, within an hour we'll be having a meeting. So in the meeting we go, and they said, McKELVIE, you're going to Tillamook, Oregon to do some work with the U.S. Navy. Now, Tillamook, Oregon is a large blimp station.
Mm-hmm.
So down we go to Tillamook. Why am I here? Well, we've developed a new air-sea rescue system where an airman is down on the water. We fly our blimp over, drop a buoy into the water on a long rope. He swings in that out of his dinghy into the buoy, and we haul him up into the gondola. So starting tomorrow, you will be in the gondola for several trips and see this performed.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you go back to your station, you're going to be floating around the water, and we're going to come and rescue you. So back I go, and as it turns out, there was a big bond drive in Canada. So they thought, now, a lot of people in Canada never seen a blimp.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we can make some big money by saying this demonstration is going to be done with a Canadian Air Force boy in the water, U.S. Navy blimp, going to come and pick him out of the water.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the day came, so they took me out in the water, put me in my rubber dinghy, my Bay West on. I'm floating around the water, over comes the blimp. Now, with meetings I had with the blimp previous in Tillamook, we had signals which we used. Are you ready? I gave him the signal.
Mm-hmm.
The pilot signaled back. And so he makes a pass over me, comes around, makes another pass over me, drops the buoy into the water on the rope. I'm floating around my dinghy. I'm out of the dinghy, floating around my May West. I got my one foot in the rubber buoy. Trying to get my other foot in, the wind shifted.
Oh, boy.
the blimp had to jerk up because he's heading for shore.
Mm-hmm.
And all these people stand on the beach. So he's got to take off, and he's going now through the bay, and I'm on the end of the rope, couldn't get my foot in, a crash boat chasing me. So eventually they cut the rope. They cut the rope and they picked me up. They took me to the base hospital just to check me over. Back to Tillamook we go. Of course, we had a big debriefing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, there's senior officers at this debriefing. Well, what happened, you know? I mean, this could have been a serious accident that the U.S. Navy and the Air Force are going to be involved in. So we went through all the briefing, and anyway, make a long story short, the U.S. Navy said, well, no, that's fine. We understand what happened here, so we'll just call it quits. So back I go to my squadron, and you can imagine what the guys called me when I got back there, you know.
How far off the surface of the water when he was taking you into shore?
100 feet.
Oh boy, that would be quite a drop if that'd be the case at that speed.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so that was
so that was the end of
that was the end of my
of the blimp
yeah.
career.
Yeah.
Now, did the Canadian Force then you do that procedure in after that to rescue?
Well, I guess after my debriefing in Tillamook, there was some debriefings in Vancouver, the base in Vancouver, of which I really didn't take part in.
No.
No.
So you don't know if they proceeded then with that type of
I'm
operation?
not sure.
No.
Somebody said they were going to wash it out, but I don't think they did.
Oh.
No.
Yeah, well, the weather up there was not conducive either, I would imagine.
Well, the weather wasn't too bad that day.
Oh.
You know, it was in the summertime, you know, so they had it picked pretty good, but the winds came up, and that's what drove him off course.
Mm-hmm.
See, the wind shifted, and he had to make his move and go up and go around. See, as soon as he did that, snapped the rope.
Yeah. Oh, in the wintertime, however,
I don't think they would attempt it in the wintertime.
Yeah.
As a demonstration, they would in a real situation.
Yeah. Where did they figure all of these pilots to be rescued would come from?
Down to airmen in the water. Crash land in the water or something.
Was that an area that would have been prevalent to have crashes or?
Yeah, there was a lot of crashes. No, not where we were, but you know, out in the Pacific, you know, or the Oregon coast, maybe, you know, out in there.
Yeah. So you were the guinea pig.
I was a guinea pig.
You're lucky you came out.
I am.
As well
very
as
lucky,
you did.
very lucky.
And you were happy that that was canceled.
But you know, I've been in the blimp several times and seen this done.
Oh.
I've seen them hauled guys up into the gondola. You know.
So in other words, you only got 1 foot in, so you were straddling
I was,
life jacket, a life ring.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Anyway.
Any other particularly interesting incidents?
No, everything was pretty routine, you know.
Uh-huh.
You know, we did fly through some rough weather, but we always made it back to base okay, you know.
Yeah, I mentioned weather was just like in the Aleutians,
Yes,
your
right,
worst enemy.
Yeah. Now, I have a story about the Aleutians too, but you were going to ask me at the end, you had a tape and you were going to say, anyway, the last question you were going to, so then I'll go into that story then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, with what you just told me, you did that for roughly 2 years.
Yes.
On reconnaissance, anti-submarine reconnaissance.
Yeah.
Then when did you hear about the end of the war, and then how was your departure as far as leaving the service then?
Oh, just normal.
Routine.
Yeah, just routine. Got your discharge, and then you went looking for a job.
Mm.
You know, I didn't want to go back to university. I wanted to just get a job and get on in my life. Yeah.
What happened when you got out of the service? Did you go back to school? Did you go to work? What?
No, I
Your
got a
career?
job. I got a job with a large building supply and concrete company, as a junior in the credit department. Just as a junior clerk in the credit department. And that's where I started. And over the years, I was with them. Well, I retired at 65, so I was with them a long time.
Was that in the west or the east coast?
West Coast.
West Coast.
Yeah.
So you stayed pretty much in that area.
Yeah, West Coast, yeah. And I worked my way up, right up to the top of the credit department. I was a general credit manager for Washington and British Columbia.
In which city?
Vancouver.
In Vancouver.
Yeah.
And you retired when?
I retired 20 years ago, so 65.
65?
Yeah,
Oh, you retired early.
yeah, yeah.
How did you manage that?
No, it wasn't easy, but, but you know, I was ready, you know.
Now, after you retired at a relatively young age, then what did you do?
Just played golf, bought a home in California,
Uh-huh.
and my wife and I would come down for the winter and go back for the summer.
Now, did you have any children?
Yes, I had 2 daughters.
And they were born what? When you, in fact, when did you get married? I didn't even ask you that. Was that during the
19.
service, after the service?
No, after the service.
After the service.
Yeah. We were married 59 years, so subtract 59 years from here. That's when we were married.
I can't multiply that well.
No, we had 2 daughters.
Mm-hmm.
Now, an interesting point, one daughter, she was a policeman. She grew up to be a policeman. I used to ask her when she was a little girl, Janie, what do you want to do when you grow up? I want to be a policeman. I want to be a policeman. So after she graduated from college, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, you know what they are, the red coat, you know, you've seen the Mounted Police. She graduated from college. A week after she graduated from college, a notice came in the paper, the RCAF are now taking women policemen.
Oh.
They'd never taken them up to that point, always men.
Yeah.
Down she went to the recruiting, got in. She was in the first girls' class as an RCMP officer.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And she has just recently retired, just 3 weeks ago. She retired after 35 years. Yeah.
What about your other daughter?
My other daughter went to university, and she went to dental college, and she became a dental hygienist. And then she practiced in that.
Did they stay up in the Vancouver area?
Yes, they're. Jane, the Mounted Police girl, is on the prairies in Edmonton.
Where's your home down here?
In Thousand Palms.
Thousand Palms.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the wind belt.
Yeah. You have to say that. Yeah. 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 It woke me up at 2 o'clock this morning. So.
Oh yes, ferocious.
Yeah.
After all of this in retirement and so forth, I had mentioned to you, is there anything that you wanted to add onto this so that tomorrow you don't say, I wish I'd have said so-and-so?
No, well, I'll tell you. I told you I was with 8BR Squadron. That's Bomber Reconnaissance, 8BR, Bomber Reconnaissance Squadron. Now, 8BR Squadron was stationed on the East Coast at the time of Pearl Harbor. When Pearl Harbor came along and the Japs started to move in on Alaska, the Annette Islands, they were starting to bomb in there. There was very little Army or Navy in there. They were all engaged in the Pacific and the European theater. There was a deal made between the Prime Minister of Canada and President Roosevelt to move 8BR Squadron from the East Coast to Alaska. They were stationed in Annette. They stationed in Annette until the U.S. forces could be built up in there. And they built the Alaska Highway to bring in more supplies. And so then 8BR was moved out of Alaska down to Pat Bay, and that's where I joined them. Now, a lot of people don't know that.
No, I should say not. Well, that was a nasty, weather-wise alone made that a difficult duty.
Yeah.
So well, that's interesting.
But they threw patrols out of Annette, and they had fighter squadron with them too. so they had fighter coverage. So it worked out really well for both countries.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting tale.
Yeah.
And again, I'll repeat, is there any other little caveat or anything?
No, that's about it. That's about it.
It covered a long period of your life. And how old are you now?
I'm, how old am I now?
You got to check that out.
I got to check that. No, I'm 68.
68.
I'll be 68 next, I'm sorry, 68 next month.
Mm-hmm. And how was your golf score?
Not very good. I'm getting old. But I enjoy the game, and some days good, other days, you know, you take it, just take what they give you.
That's the way life is.
Yes, isn't it? Yeah.
Fair to go. Well, I tell you, this it's an honor and privilege for us in the Air Museum to be able to interview you and others like you.
Well, thank you. It's my privilege to. I've been a docent here for a long time.
Yes, I know you
20 years maybe.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that's you're a veteran, really a veteran.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
So that's why you've got so many stars on your badge
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
And but as I say, we feel, as you do too as a docent, it's important that these stories are told and recorded,
Sure.
and which they are, and sent to the Library of Congress.
Yeah.
You'll receive a DVD of them, of course, and then you can get some for your kids too.
Thank you.
But as I say, an honor and privilege for us to be able to interview people such as you, and tell us of your escapades during
Well,
the war.
it's a privilege for me to have done it.
Yeah.
too.
So thank you very much.
I appreciate it very
Yes.
much.
Mr. McKELVIE.
McKELVIE.
McKELVIE.